What's up, everybody? Today's lesson is going to be simple: how to build dark metal riffs, how to truly create the darkness. I'm going to give you all the simple answers on how to do that. So, in only a few minutes, you know what you're doing. Easy answers. How to write the riffs takes 10 minutes to figure out what's going on. Then you can just go practice writing the riffs. The more you practice them, the more you'll get the style that you like out of yourself. But I'm here to give you some tips and show you what bands are doing when they write the dark riff, give you some ideas on what's going on. So, the first thing we're going to discuss is the intervals. Intervals are the distance between the notes. You don't need to know all the distances, but you only need to know the ones that apply to the style of music you're playing. So, in hard rock and metal, we mostly use, or what's very common, I should say, because I can't predict what's mostly used. But if you look at the songs you're listening to, anything hard rock or metal, any type of metal, you're going to notice that the intervals that are darker are used more often. Dark intervals are used more often than the happier intervals. We need the happy intervals, or the happier sounding intervals, but much less often. So let's go over some of these intervals. A minor second interval is a half step. So if you play E and F, it's going to be darker than if you played E to F sharp, because that is a whole step of 2 frets. Now let's look at that half step again. That's darker. So we now understand that minor intervals are darker than major intervals. We're not going to worry about the perfect intervals today. That's for another day. We're writing major and minor riffs, major and minor intervals into our riffs to make the riffs dark. So then to write a darker riff, we need to control the amount of major and minor intervals. So let's go over another popular interval, the third. The major third interval is a 2 whole step gap, which covers, say, G to B, 3rd fret to the 7th fret. That's the major third. That's 2 whole steps. Let's look at a minor third, which is 1.5 steps. The minor intervals are always 1 fret less than their major counterparts. So let's look at a minor third, which would be G to B flat. Now let's look at them back to back. Half step, whole step. Minor second, majors. Here we have a minor second and a minor third. Here we have a major second and a major third. So you can clearly hear that these major intervals are used in rock riffs, commercial rock riffs that you'd hear on the radio. These are all major intervals. Let's look at those minor cousins. G to E is a minor third, that's why it is dark. F to E. So what you need to do when you're playing your riffs and you're writing your riffs is you need to just figure out to yourself, recognize anyway, what type of interval you're playing when you're creating what you're creating. Because if you want it to be darker, you would check the interval and see if it's a whole step or 2 whole steps, and you would cut that down to make it minor. And that's basically what you're going to do. Another thing you do to add some darkness to your riff is you add in a diminished scale. The diminished scale is all minor thirds, everyone. It's just repeated minor thirds. That's all the diminished scale is. So wherever you begin a minor third interval and just keep repeating it, you've got yourself a diminished scale. Since there are only a few diminished scales, because each one covers 4 keys, and there's only 12 keys, so there's only 3 diminished scales, whatever scale you're playing works in 4 keys, so you've got a 33% chance of being in the correct diminished scale for whatever key you would be writing in, if you're writing in a key. You don't even need to be in a key when you're writing the riff. You technically only need to be in the key when you're cutting the solo, because that's where it needs to make melodic sense. But writing the riff, you can do whatever you want. You can be in and out of the different keys. You can write with the intervals. Instead of being in a key, you just write with the intervals. And I do that a lot of the time myself, so I won't pay attention to what key anything's in. I just pay attention to the intervals, such as a riff like this. Now this riff is E, G power chord, the B flat, and an F. You can't find all these notes in the same key or all these chords in the same key, because this E chord is E and B. It's got a B in it, which means it's not in the key of D minor. But then we see the B flat. So you could argue that as a flatted 5, I'm in the key of E minor. With the B flat, the flatted 5, which is true. You can say that, and it is true. But then I go to the F. There's no way to justify a B, an F, and a B flat in the same key. So you would say to yourself, I'm in and out of the key of E minor with a flatted 5, and I resort down to the key of A minor for this F, E thing. Now, if I choose to use a diminished scale, I might use this one, which is F diminished, or it's A flat diminished, or it's B diminished, or it's D diminished. It's one of those 4 keys that it comes from. But I'm not paying attention to what key the scale is or isn't in when I'm playing it. I'm paying attention to the fact that I like the sound low down on the low end. So if instead of playing this F chord that I would use in the riff, I'm going to add a diminished sound on top of this F to support this F sound. So here I'm using this diminished scale that I'm not paying attention to what key it's in. I could say F diminished, or I could say it's in the key of G flat major. I could say this is A flat, this is G sharp diminished, it's in the key of A major. But I'm not playing in any of those keys. I'm just borrowing the scale because I like the way it sounds. In other words, I just want to play off the F for the chord and the diminished scale, regardless of what key they're from, because I like the way they sound, and they mix with this up here at B flat. So if I summarize my chords, that's basically what I'm playing. E, B flat, G, F, the F diminished scale, back to E. And actually the way I would play it is I would do it like I showed earlier in the riff, 3 times like this. And on the 4th one, I would reverse it. Because I want to go from the F down to the lower note E. And then for me to do that, I would backpedal through this diminished scale from the F that's down here. And that is some serious ways to get serious darkness out of your riff. There are other ways to get darkness. You could completely ignore the fact that any of the notes are in any of the keys, and you can go what we call atonal, and play nothing from a key. That would be darkness. You could also study the band Slayer. They play lots of things that are dark. They are masters of the dark intervals. And so, if you want to learn how to write a dark riff, go back to classic Slayer and listen and read and learn some of those riffs, because those guys pay no attention to what's going on in a key. They go for darkness. So check out some of those Slayer riffs. South of Heaven will get you some darkness quick. Rain and Blood, dark, dark, dark. That stuff came out heavier than Metallica because they were using more dark intervals than Metallica was. Metallica went for a commercial metal sound, which blends the major intervals with the minors equally so that the whole world will like the music, because only some of the world likes all darkness. And you will find the darker the music, the smaller the audience. So Metallica was smart enough to go, hey, we want to be heavy, we want to be fast, but we also want the world to like the music. We don't want it to be limited to just heavy metal men, let's say. So there, if you pay attention to the intervals that Metallica uses, they're a split between major and minors. There isn't any diminished stuff in their work. But you look at Slayer, it's mostly minor intervals all day long. And that's the difference between why they're a heavier band. And then you add in some heavier drums and little things like that begin to make it heavier music. But the core of the heavy is starting with the dark interval, which is the minor intervals and the diminished well, diminished scales are all just minor thirds. So we could just simply say the more minor intervals you use, the darker your music will be. Guys, I hope this explains how to write a dark riff, how to create darkness in your stuff, and I hope it helps you elevate your education, because that's what you're here for. I'm here to educate you. See you guys in the next video.